Good afternoon, colleagues and friends. My name is Glaister Ricketts, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this afternoon's forum on behalf of the Council and members of the Jamaica Institution of Engineers. One of the main mandates of the JIE is to facilitate the exchange of information and ideas among our members and the general public. And so today we are pleased to be hosting this forum titled The Impact of the Russian Attack on Ukraine on the three critical sectors in Jamaica: construction, energy, and manufacturing. Since engineers operate in every facet of the Jamaican economy, we therefore have to plan ahead to avoid a black swan effect, which is an unpredictable event that is beyond what is normally expected of a situation and has potentially severe consequences. The work that we do requires the availability of critical raw materials and services. It is for this reason that the JIE sees the importance of convening this webinar. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia started 29 days ago and continues even now without anyone knowing how and when it will end. Russia and Ukraine were up to recently two of the leading suppliers of goods and services to the world market. Between them both, they were the second largest supplier of crude oil, the third largest supplier of wheat, and a significant supplier of metals, minerals, and highly qualified workers with digital engineering and IT skills. With these commodities and services not available to the market because of the embargo or other factors, Jamaica will be impacted directly or indirectly. As a country, how we analyze and strategize during this tumultuous period is what we will be discussing this afternoon. We are therefore honored to have the leaders in the manufacturing, energy, and construction sector as our panelists. Gentlemen, thanks for agreeing to participate in this forum. We look forward to the insights and information you will share. To all our attendees, thanks once again for joining us this afternoon. We expect that we are about to embark on a lively and engaging discussion. And now I hand over to our moderator, President Marvin Campbell.
Thank you, IPP Ricketts. Good afternoon, everyone. Exciting discussion ahead. We're fortunate today to have an esteemed guest as our panelist. I'm looking forward to some vibrant discussions. We really have the top persons within the different sectors for the manufacturing, energy, and construction. And these persons really need no introduction, but just for the formality, we will go through. We have from the manufacturing sector, we have Metry Seaga, the CEO of Jamaica Fibreglass Products Limited. He's also past president of the Jamaica Manufacturing and Exporters Association. We also have with us Hugh Graham, Managing Director of Paramount Trading Jamaica Limited. So those two panelists will be leading us in the discussion as it relates to the manufacturing sector. Also, we have with us past president of the JIE, Lenworth Kelly, who is presently the president of the Incorporated Master Builders Association of Jamaica. Right, who will lead us in the construction discussion. As well, everything needs energy. So from the energy sector, we have representing today, Mr. David Barrett, who is a principal consultant for ENBAR Consulting. Right, alongside David, we will also have Mr. Owen, who is the president of the Jamaica Society of Energy Engineers. As well as, last but definitely not least, we have Mr. Stanley Smellie, who is the energy engineer and researcher at the University of the West Indies, Jamaica. We couldn't ask for a more esteemed panel. And so we're looking forward to a great discussion, which is in keeping with the theme for JIE for 2020, which is resilience through engineering, securing our future. And we can all agree that what happens on a global scale, particularly what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, will impact us here in Jamaica. Right. So thanks also to our persons who have logged on, our participants. So I'm going to start by allowing, Metry Seaga just to give us, his, quick overview on how he sees the sector based on what's happening in the Ukraine and Russia.
Thank you very much, Marvin, and good afternoon, everyone on the panel. Good afternoon to your listeners today and those joining the podcast. I've always heard people say that a good crisis is a terrible thing to waste. And in this crisis, I think we have got to find the positives for us as a country. Obviously, war is a terrible thing, and we don't want war anywhere in the world. There can be no winners. However, with us just recently coming out of a pandemic, and I'm not sure, and I'm reticent to say coming out of, because some would say we're still in it. Coming out of 2.5 years of a pandemic, and then to be greeted with what is potentially World War III is rough times that we're living in. But I think it is important for us to look at the positive. And certainly we have seen in the manufacturing sector some positives. We have seen people coming to us from as far afield as the West Coast of the United States and nearer, who would traditionally buy out of China. And with all that's happening with COVID, with the war, the uncertainty that surrounds doing business from so far away has led people back to us, led people closer to home, let people realize that they need to look at solutions that are closer to home. And I think that we need to make sure and take advantage of these opportunities. I think that we need to gain customers that we previously never had an opportunity to speak to. I think we need to treat them so well and give them service that they're not accustomed to, and keep them for life. I think those are some positives that we need to take out of it. There are opportunities in this crisis, and we need to make sure and follow them through to the end. So that's my opening salvo, and back to you, Marvin.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that, Metry. In the midst of a crisis, there's opportunity. Definitely, for sure. We'd also love to hear from you as well, Hugh Graham, just for 2 minutes to give us, your overview of how you're seeing what's happening and the impact on the sector.
Well, yeah, good afternoon, President, and afternoon, panelists and other panelists and listeners. And a special afternoon to my director, Metry. I would come off the same line of Metry, but I'll go a little bit deeper and probably granular. That is an opportunity, especially for the engineers, to rethink. And since we have disruptions of COVID, so you might want to call it some disruptive thinking. So, for example, where steel will be impacted by whether fossil fuels or natural gas, and those costs are going to be driven up, which will undoubtedly end up in higher building costs. And as I see it, with the growing of the economy, we need more commercial spaces. Maybe something that the engineers have to look at is how we can use alternative methodology, like to cut back on steel, for example, whether we're going to carbon fiber, whether we're going to more go to a policy principle of retrofitting buildings as opposed to knock them down and go for new, where you have to use more steel, and probably thinking like going to polyurethane in a concrete to replace some of the steel, but still keep your strength. That kind of thinking. So I'm thinking that there's an opportunity to recast our minds and break away and be as disruptive as the times that we're in.
Thank you, Hugh. You're throwing down a challenge as well to the engineers, to be more disruptive, think outside of what they refer to as the box, and utilize that skill set for an alternative solution. So, that's a great segue, given the steel analogy and the option to now bring on Lenworth Kelly, who's representing the construction sector. You're on mute, Lenworth.
Thanks, Marvin.
Yeah, man, hearing it out.
Carefully what Metry and you by extension have said. There are opportunities. Generally in the sector, we have been battered last year because of high import inputs, so to speak. And we saw, and I have to kind of go back because last year we saw lumber in going up to 300%, and steel was up to like 80%, that kind of thing. The silver linings for the industry really have been what is produced locally, and those have held very well. Cement, since 2018, I think that increased last year and this year, and our aggregates, certainly. So there is a sound argument to be made to bolster local production of as best as possible. If we have learned anything else from this pandemic, it's the importance of having these things. Because when they come from other markets, that market protects itself first. So they will. So if we need cement and we don't produce it, if wherever we are to import it from, that source market will take care of themselves first, and what you get is the excess. So I certainly want to put that out there, our whatever is produced locally, and also to put in a plug for us to go back to planting. It's a medium long-term arrangement with lumber, but certainly we are still a land of wood as far as I'm aware, and we need to have a plan to go back there. There's many will have argued that there's greater investment in planting up some lumber trees than investing in an insurance policy, and that we can examine that in different ways. But I just want to leave that there. That really and truly there is opportunity, and we have to grasp those. We have to just float with whatever else comes at us.
Yes, thank you, Lenworth. I must say, being in the development space myself, the prices of lumber, steel, just going through the roof. I mean, had a big impact on just the cost of the end product, which in the end, homeowners for the business that I'm in, they struggle with all the other price escalations just to try and buy an affordable home. So I'm with you. Anything that we can do to cushion the impact and create more resilience, I think is something that is a good thing and is welcomed. So we'll thank you. Then we'll switch now a little bit to the energy sector. If I remember correctly, I said that energy cannot be created or destroyed, right? But can be changed from one form to another. So, we'll kickstart the energy discussion with David Barrett. Just give us, your thoughts, David, quickly in terms of what you're seeing in the space.
Right, thanks. So it's an opportunity for us to assess our energy security status, because as we look at some of the statistics, and there are a couple of slides that may be used, but we see where the transportation sector is a huge user of bauxite and electricity. So those are sort of areas that we are going to be seriously at risk as we look at what's happening with the current conflict. When we also look at our Jamaica electricity supply, we see that well, there's a lot of petroleum, almost 45% or more used, and we're up to almost 40% of natural gas. So we've actually switched, well, we're about to switch, as it were, to more natural gas. And the significance of all of that is how we assess our energy security status. When you look at the natural gas trade flows, what you see is a lot of gas going towards Europe, going towards Asia Pacific, and so on. And as a small country, you know, we like to punch above our weight, you know, in everything. But in this case, we are a little bit of a flea in a big ocean. And so in this current situation where Russia is putting out almost 10% of global crude supply, almost 17% of global gas supplies, and then with the current embargo, you see a scenario where the big players are going to start taking off more gas, right? And whatever crude is available, they're going to be taking off more. So that's going to leave us in a difficult situation in terms of pricing and in terms of actual supplies. Now, New Fortress is providing for us, again, a single supplier. That's a challenging situation for security. So just trying to wrap up in this short time, we have already observed oil prices running up to $116 per barrel, a big jump because of the crisis. We have seen natural gas going above $6 per MMBTU. That's another big jump, right? And if I was to just say that our supply risk, perhaps I would put it this way, I have a little stoplight image where I'm looking at our energy cost risk being very high, or cost risk being very high, because we are a low priority for natural gas. The global shift in supplies going towards the East, Europe, and so on. And natural gas is coming from one supplier, and natural gas is a high percentage of our electricity demand. We have increase in renewables, but it's less. On the energy supply risk side, it's low to moderate in my assessment, because although we have a single supplier, they are providing quite a bit of that fuel. Fossil fuel storage and diversification, Petrogerm has indicated that they do have options for that. We have 21 days in Jamaica and 1 million barrels in St. Eustatius. And of course, we're increasing in our renewables. And then finally, in terms of how we look at our energy security opportunities, I join Metry Seaga to say, you know, we have significant opportunities there. The minister recently indicated lithium batteries would have the GCT off, so prices are going to come down. We already have battery hybrid with JPS. The IRP has more renewables, EV initiatives, and oil and gas exploration. So that's how I would cap it in that stoplight kind of sense. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, David. You mentioned a lot. I'm sure that's stimulating some thought for some more questions as well from our persons who have logged on, our participants. I'm interested, you know, with the conversion you mentioned around the oil and the LNG based on the demand. So I'll now ask Mr. Owen Gunning just to also give us, you know, quickly your thoughts in terms of what you're seeing in the sector. So you're on mute. You're on mute, Owen.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Marvin.
Hearing you loud and clear. Yeah.
Oh, you're hearing me. And thank you for introducing me. And let me welcome the participants who are online. I am president of the Jamaica Society of Engineers. I am also president of a newly formed organization, the Private Electrical Inspector Association of Jamaica. That one has been brought on to streamline the flow of electrical inspection work in Jamaica. But I'm also a training expert for AEE, and have trained most of the energy managers in Jamaica and the Caribbean so far. Let me say to you that generally there are things that we have control over, and there are things that we don't have control over. We don't have control over oil because we don't produce oil. We don't have control over wars, and we don't have control over a pandemic. But certainly we have control over what we can produce from things that God has given us, which is sun and wind. And really nobody can take those things away from us. What I find that we have not been using those renewable energy sufficiently. And maybe one of the problem, and we're going to discuss some of those later on, and maybe the persons will ask questions. How do we solve some of this problem? I have a spreadsheet which I'll share with persons. I know, for example, Mr. Seaga. I went to his factory maybe a couple of years ago when I was working for USAID, and he has certainly implemented a significant amount of solar for his manufacturing plant, and is reaping the benefit of it. So it is something that we look at, and certainly we need to look at the things that we can control and how we can actually reduce our energy footprint and energy bills for manufacturing and for householders also. So we'll talk about those later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen. Yes, the key takeaway: focus on what's in our control.
Yes.
Right? I mean, Lenworth mentioned that we're the land of wood, also the land of water, right? And 365 days of sunshine, right? So we do, have some natural resources that we could capitalize on, right? Yeah, man, thanks for that. Next up, we'll have, Stanley Smellie, just to give us your thoughts quickly in 2 minutes in terms of how you're seeing the energy sector.
Okay, so thank you very much, Marvin, and welcome participants, fellow panelists. I won't repeat anything that my colleagues have said. It's spot on in terms of my own thinking. Don't want to sound like an alarmist, but certainly the consequences of the Russian attack on Ukraine is that certainly Jamaica perhaps should be on the lookout for another recession. I say this when one considers the historical context. Back in 2008, we had a global recession, and we see how that impacted our lives and our livelihoods. Here we have a situation where, considered to be geopolitics, and how that has impacted us here in Jamaica in terms of potentially the supply of oil, how that will be disrupted, and as a result of that, whether we can meet our demand for energy and generate that electricity that our economies depend on. It's the lifeblood of our economies, electricity. And so if the price gets too high, or if it's not managed a certain way, then certainly that can have a ripple effect to the rest of our society. But this is not new. We've been here before. And as a result of that, here in Jamaica, our government and industrial partners, we've looked at a number of ways that we can perhaps make ourselves more resilient, be able to recover much faster from such shocks. And one of the things that we've done is that we have pretty much diversified our energy supply. David mentioned the fact that we now have gas. We didn't have gas before. Here in Jamaica, we also have a situation where Jamaica Public Service, they manage under what you call a revenue cap regime for electricity tariff. And what that allows is that when you consider the price of electricity, the quantity of electricity that's sold, then what they're saying is pretty much that the amount of revenue that JPS can earn must remain at a certain cap. What that pretty much means is that here in Jamaica, persons are not penalized for practicing energy conservation and efficiency. We're not so penalized, well, not persons penalized, but even the utility. They're not penalized in the sense of the threat of earning less by virtue of more persons being more energy efficient, persons going more solar, as Owen was saying, using more renewables. So these are some of the things that we expect to be picking up now that we have a crisis on our hands, and the fact that we want to ensure that we can go about our lives and our livelihoods. And so energy conservation, energy efficiency, we're seeing clearly where that is needed. And this revenue cap regime that is in place, pretty much, it will, in a sense, protect JPS and ensure that they get the revenues irrespective of the quantity of energy being sold. Now, that might sound like a bad thing, because what it means is that for those of us who remain on the grid, then we may end up paying even more for that same quantity of electricity, because JPS revenue needs to be maintained. Now, that is certainly an indirect impact of the consequences of Russia's attack, because the cost of electricity is likely to go up, not only because of the cost of oil and the threat of supply and shortages, but also the fact that more persons will practice conservation and efficiency, more persons will go solar, and so someone has to pick up that tab. Bottom line though, Jamaica has a plan, a sound plan. We have our national development plan, and when crises like this happen, one of our colleagues earlier said it's an opportunity. I think it would be an opportunity for our policymakers, our government, those decision makers to look at how much more we can ramp up implementation of various initiatives, such as our integrated resource planning, as David mentioned. It's really about least cost expansion planning and how you can treat energy conservation and efficiency, the use of renewable energies and other stuff as a source of energy. So as I wrap up, consider this for a moment. Building a new power plant that would utilize fossil fuels. The IRP is pretty much saying that building that power plant, it must compete with helping customers, you and I, to improve our energy efficiency. And if we can have more efficient use of energy, then that within of itself would have reduced our reliance on fossil fuels, reduced our reliance on external energy sources, and that would have caused us to become more energy secure. So fundamentally, this is an opportunity for Jamaica to improve its energy security. And certainly our government in Jamaica, I'm here from academia, energy engineer at UWI. I have no interest in terms of the politics, but based on what's happening in Jamaica, I feel more confident now in terms of our ability to recover than I did, say, 10 years ago when the first pandemic dropped. And that had a lot to do with the input that engineers, practitioners have had in terms of policy formulation, policy development here in Jamaica. So thank you very much. Look forward to the questions.
All right, thank you, Stanley, representing the academia. But don't worry, Stanley, many academics get into politics as well, you know, so you still have a future ahead, so don't shy away. We need smart people to branch into politics. But, you know, I think from the discussion and the feedback from the different sectors, I think one thing is clear, you know, we believe that, you know, with what's happening in Russia and the Ukraine, that, you know, with the impact on fuel, which drives energy, we are going to be impacted while there may be opportunities. So I think, you know, as we dive into the discussions, you know, what came to mind is, you know, what can we do as an within the energy industry to have greater energy security? And I mean, I probably threw that out to you, David, since you mentioned, you know, the need for us to have energy security. But what can be done at a local level to improve upon our energy security?
Right. So as Owen mentioned, we have control over certain things. We have some, well, in terms of harnessing. Solar, wind, hydro are our main ones. The sugar industry has been using less biomass, so perhaps that's not going to be a direction that we're going to, you know, forge in. But definitely the energy policy needs to give greater support to renewables, specifically those three: solar, wind, hydro, right? The next thing is that we need to properly tie the electric vehicle revolution, which we hope will come. The minister already announced 1,000 EVs will have, you know, benefits of duty reductions per year. But we need to tie that not to the grid, but to local generation. So for locations, companies, hotels, and so on, they need to, you know, have their solar systems included so that you are powering your EV from clean sources, right? Also, the IRP needs to incorporate resilience, right? It does look at renewables, but last time I looked at it, it didn't speak a lot to how we would survive or get through a storm, you know, a major hurricane that could knock down poles, etc. One of the ways to do that is to ensure that we have renewables dispersed across the island. So there has to be not just an integrated resource plan for capacity, but an IRP that looks at locations and how the grid can be resilient, right? And certainly we need to look at how we utilize gas, because whereas gas was touted many, many years ago as sort of the price savior for Jamaica, it hasn't worked out that way. And the prices were increasing even before the war. So we need to perhaps relook at how we are utilizing gas, perhaps the arrangements we have for gas. We have one supplier now, and I perceive that there will probably be interest in the future for other suppliers, and that would also increase our energy security. So let me stop there.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, if I may chip in very quickly though, I'll just add to what David said, just to say that the whole idea of diversifying our energy supply, whereby now we have gas in addition to oil, that in and of itself provided us with some greater levels of energy security as well. Because while they are both imported fuels, oil is far more volatile on the world market than gas. And based on the volume or access to gas versus our access to oil. So the fact that, yes, we're price takers, whatever the world decides that is a price, we have to just work with it. And given the size of our economies, we're not able to just pay any price. It does really have a significant impacts, but greater diversification in our energy supply will go a far way. So at the moment, we have about 13% renewables. A few years ago, that was 0% solar in terms of what is on the grid from the transmission point. Now we have about 3% solar. We still have about 3% wind, 7% 7% wind, and about 3% hydro. So based on what is happening right now, greater diversification will also go a far way. And the signals sent recently, whereby the government is now removing GCT and lithium-ion batteries, I think that's a step in the right direction, because we're not only diversifying for electricity, to meet our electricity demand, but we're diversifying in terms of transportation, which is also a big area in terms of our usage of imported fuels. Thank you.
Marvin, if I may add something, I don't think that a lot of persons have converted, including the University of the West Indies, have converted have put in plants that are using natural gas. And those prices really started maybe about $8-10 per MMBTU. I heard recently from someone in the bauxite company that the price they are now paying for natural gas is up to $60 per MMBTU. Certainly that is not sustainable at all. And no manufacturing company. In fact, you might very well have a white elephant on your hands if you had invested in a plant with an expectation that that your natural gas cost would have been maybe $8-10-12 per MMBTU, is now up to 60. It's just not sustainable. You just can't afford to operate any plant like that. So we have to find, as I said, there are other things that we can do, things that we have control over. And I give an example, for example, I give an example like Australia. Australia is producing so much energy from solar that in the day, the supply exceeds demand. And in fact, they have to be begging person to turn off their solar because the grid just can't take it. You know, it's more than, and the grid becomes unstable because of the amount of renewable energy that is onto the grid. And for me, that's a situation, that's a place we should be heading towards. We have to look at what is missing, what are the barriers, and one of the main barriers is availability of capital to put in these renewable plants. As far as I'm concerned, I see the banks are always willing to give loans for cars and houses. I mean, I think it's time for the banks to just drive around and look at houses that have space for roof solar and just literally begging persons, are you willing to take a loan from me? That is where we need to be heading, not making it more and more difficult for persons to access capital to put in renewable energy.
But thanks for that, Owen. I'm a little scared now because with what you guys are saying, with us not having as much proliferation of renewables as so, and with oil prices and LNG, heading sky high, from a consumer perspective, and I want to jump maybe to the manufacturing now. Let's start with you, Metry. What can we expect from the consumer end with the inputs for manufacturing just going up, and that's not within our control?
Well, you know, a lot of it is within our control. So let us take, for example, electricity. As I think we started 100% on solar during the day. It's the funding is out there to do it. The capital is out there to do it. We simply need the will of business people and the banks to go out there and get it done. So that's one component that we have some control. There is a component that we don't have control over, which is the cost of raw materials that we import. But if COVID and this war has taught us anything, it is that, as other speakers have said, we have got to be self-sufficient. We've got to be self-sustainable. We have got to be able to create industries now that will allow us to serve ourselves. Now, listen, I recognize that we can't make everything in Jamaica, and we live in a global society, global world. But Jamaica has the opportunity of its greatest asset, which we have never used in the past. And some people think it's sun, and some people think it's coffee and banana and rum and beaches. It's not. Our greatest location is our greatest asset is our location in the Americas. We are located in the Americas where Singapore is located in Asia. We need to develop our economy as a global logistics economy. We need large companies to be producing their goods here. Even if we import the raw materials, we need to be producing here. We need to identify the products that we need to sustain ourselves and have them start being manufactured here. And I'll give you a quick story. I got the opportunity to go to Singapore about 6 or 7 years ago. And they're the largest supplier of a coffee drink to the world. And I said, well, where do raw materials come from? They don't have a single cow in Singapore. They don't have a single stalk of sugar cane. And they don't have a single bean of coffee growing there. But they import all those things into the hub and they add value there. So to me, that is how we have to start to build our economy as a global logistics centered economy around which we can start to manufacture, add value, produce the things there that we need. And oil or derivatives of oil may be just one of those things. But we have, going back to the cost increase, if we start to do that, it will bring down our costs locally. And that's how we get the costs down, and that's how we get the security of making sure that we have products.
All right, thanks for that, Metry. You know, maximizing our location. That's true. I mean, we are blessed naturally where that is concerned in terms of logistics opportunities. So let me ask you, on the manufacturing side, I mean, since this war has started, what impact have you been seeing, whether it's in your business or just globally, just locally in the manufacturing space?
That's to me?
No, to Hugh. Hugh. I was just asking you, you know, we spoke about some of the rising prices, you know, spoke about opportunities as well to explore different options. But I was just asking, you know, what are you seeing though locally, whether in your specific business or just in general manufacturing industry, has the impact has the war had so far?
Right. So before I answer that, I'll say to Metry, my director, that we have been trying to do solar for the longest while. And as you know, we have a lot of roof space. And it has been proving to be quite challenging in terms of cost. So I would love to hear, you know, how you have done it. And because I think that we really need to do it. And especially now, where some immediate things need to be done. So I'll use that to segue into your question, Marvin. So the immediate impact that we are seeing is a whole dislocation of trade a exacerbation of something that normally would take 3 months, now taking 7 months or 8 months, or you're not able to get a confirmation. So, and the costs are, you know, people are not wanting to give you guaranteed prices. So it had gone down to 30 days. Now suppliers are saying, okay, we will confirm the prices when we know what is happening. So I think some immediate steps, as I talk about the disruptive thinking, is a whole purchasing and logistics has to be different. My view, and I am wondering if it shouldn't be a government-led initiative, you know, similar to how you have these the economic, I call it economic forum, but the oversight
Economic Growth Council.
Yeah, if this situation doesn't warrant it, because we tend to get things later, so we're not upfront. So let us say COVID might have started in China in December, we get it in March. So, you know, you may have a recession start, we get it 8 months, 1 year later. So shouldn't we be preparing now whether we are pivoting to changing our methodology, fast tracking some things, just to cushion that shock that is almost sure to come? And I'm not preaching doom and gloom. I mean, I buy one product and the price tripled, and I have to beg the supplier out of Germany to sell it on top of paying the price. So money wasn't their issue. So from the way I'm seeing it, I think that it would be worthwhile a group of persons like we are here on this forum look at some of the things that we can do to mitigate, you know, stave off some of the effects that, as I said, I am seeing it and I'm feeling it right now, and we're in high plans to deal with some of that, i.e., for example, looking for more warehouse space to store more goods. And I'm just saying that is real. And I'm not giving away a secret. I'm saying we're trying to find it, and that in itself is extremely difficult to find right now. You know, so I just, you know, hold it right there.
All right, thank you. So, you know, the supply chain challenges are real, moving across the sector.
So Marvin, if I could add
okay.
you know, we need to look more as Metry has said about value added and producing and using our own raw material. And if you go in the supermarket, you see goods being imported from as far as Afghanistan, fruit juices. Now I can tell you that there are certain, I mean, we have fruits in season, but if you walk in the country and you look under a mango tree, you see fruit just you know, just being thrown away. And we need these little cottage industries that can we can take these fruits and we can make, you know, fruit juices from them. Our children will be, you know, would be happier and healthier and all of that. But all of those things can be produced locally and using renewable energy, for argument's sake. You know, you look at sun-dried fruits from coming out of California. It's very expensive, but it's very tasty. We have exotic fruits here we're not using. So for me, we need to be a lot more strategic and also to be willing to use a lot more of our local raw material. We cannot depend on importing on these stuff. We just can't. It just burden our foreign exchange and all of that. When you look at the you know, foreign exchange import to foreign exchange outflow, we just can't continue.
Right,
Marvin, if you would allow me to answer, just to add to what Owen is saying,
okay.
the way to do that, and you know, I'm speaking to anybody who has influence in the government, and I know some of us on here have a lot more influence than others. So I'm speaking to those that have the most influence here. Mr. Graham, the point is that the government needs to start by supporting its own, and local procurement has got to change. We have got to stop importing everything because the price is cheaper when we are burdening our country with the use of foreign exchange, and we are making other economies rich, right? The royalties here this week, but what the British did was they came into our country, they took our raw materials, they took it away, they added value to it, and then they brought it back here and taught us how to like it, right? We need to change that paradigm now. And companies are not born efficient. Companies are not born with experience. Engineers and architects don't come out of school and have experience. They get that experience by doing work and by growing. And the government needs to be the one to give us an opportunity. Manufacturers, engineers, architects, interior decorators, you name it. It's a bugbear of mine to say it.
No, man, fair enough, and we appreciate it. And you know, that's a nice segue into the builders, the construction. I mean, I saw that for last year in the midst of COVID, the construction sector kept growing, things were positive. But the question I have now though for you, Len, is with this current war, you know, in Ukraine and Russia, what will this impact, what will this have on the capital expenditure by the budget? We just had the Minister of Finance roll out big plans. Are we expected to see a continued growth with steel prices shooting through the roof, lumber shooting through the roof? Or are we expected to see some kind of contraction in the industry? You're on mute, Lenworth.
So Marvin, let's kind of take it from where the conflict is. You know, Russia is one of the I think they're in the top 5 largest producers of steel metals generally. And so once you have the crisis there, what you really now see is a rush for secure supply. Now, remember, we are minuscule in this game. And so it is, we just sometimes go on a hope on that we can get supply. And so it has been extraordinary because the conflict by itself is extraordinary for this time. Nobody is expecting conflict of that particular nature or scale, right? And so what we've been seeing now is that interconnectedness in the global supply chain. We're seeing the kind of impacts on that. So you look, just as an example, and I want to just kind of make sure the audience appreciate what is working on the ground. We have Rusal here. Rusal is a huge aluminum producer. When you invade Ukraine, they have to shut down those refineries, which feed the aluminum smelters in Russia. And coupled with that, now you have the sanctions, so you can't really do the trading. So there's a what you call a lockout, and so for whatever is left, the big guns go after that. So then so the demand comes, the price goes up, and remember that we had supply chain issues before, so this just goes on top of that. And we're seeing, I think there was an article earlier this week about where the steel price is going. Last year we saw it go maybe up to about 80%. Then it started trending down, and then it shot back up. So it's higher now than where it ever was last year, based on the numbers we are seeing. It's about doubled from where we would have started last year. So it's rough. Now we'll go specifically to government first. Increasing the capital budget, yes, but we don't know when those numbers came in, and I remember now this is extraordinary. So we're going to be looking at what you call material fluctuations. If you take your construction as a kind of crude, but let us say you're going 60% material and 40% on. you now start looking at what are the core things. You can't get away from your steel, you can't get away from your concrete, and you're pretty much going to use some amount of lumber. And so we anticipate some significant impact there, and that particular spend may not generate the level, the amount of projects or the extent of projects that perhaps the government had envisaged, because then now you're going to have to them. We increase the money, so whatever money I can do less. I remember our dollar is still galloping away, right? So they would have been that normal kind of eating away of whatever the provision is. So I don't think we are going to get the bang for that provision for capital expenditure. I don't think the bang that's expected, I don't think we're going to get that, Marvin. And we, as I said, we're just going on a hope and a prayer here, because outside that can be produced locally, we have to just see how it goes in the international market to see what it comes to us. So as I shared earlier, that it don't make sense I put up a table now, because it will be obsolete by tomorrow, right? Based on just how the prices are. It's crazy out there, people, really crazy. The people, especially in manufacturing, who know, they come straight from source market. Some of us in construction here, we may take to the bigger suppliers. So you transfer with the arts and the tankers and say, oh, they are managing out there. It is crazy. And we don't know where this can go.
Right, thanks for that, Len. So, I mean, a couple of other questions I'd like to ask, you know, where we see house prices going, where we see food prices going, but, you know, I know the participants also have questions themselves. So before, you know, I'd probably allow Shauna Kate, if there are any particular questions that are coming in that we'd want to throw to the panelists to hear their thoughts or any clarifications.
Certainly. Good afternoon, everyone. I am seeing a question from Barrington Jackson. What are the expectations for new renewable technology to be added to the grid as it relates to energy storage or any associated energy efficiency equipment? I'm not sure which one of our experts will take that one. Is it?
Which one do you want that one?
Let me try to answer that question, because we do have what you call the IRP, and that determines how much renewable energy can be added to the grid before the grid becomes unstable, without of course not storage, because as you know, renewable energy is intermittent. You certainly you could have 10 megawatt of solar or wind, and it stops suddenly, and then what would happen? You can't get your plants to your fossil fuel plants to start quickly enough. So you have to, either you're going to shut down or you're going to have battery storage to ride you over until you can get your plants up. But all of that is part of government procurement. You can't just decide to build a plant and tie into the grid, because that is part of a procurement measure, and I think anything over 25 megawatt has to be tendered. So it is not a question of, it's not really that you can just go in and build a plant. The plant in Westmoreland, the 8 Rivers plant, which I think was 37 megawatt, and I think was 50 megawatt peak. They had to tender to be able to supply power and sell to JPS, who then sells it to consumers.
Yes, and may I just briefly add to what Owen had said? I know we often talk about renewable energy. That's in our mindset because we're using our own God-given sun, wind, water, and what is indigenous to us. But based on some of those limitations that Owen just mentioned, potential instability on the grid and the fact that you have to tender here and there, it does make low carbon energy sources also attractive. So earlier we heard mentioned that at the case of UA. In the case of UA, we had transition, and we now have our own LNG power plant. And yes, the cost per MMBTU of LNG has gone up. However, the question also asks about efficient energy technologies. And so by virtue of having your own power plant, you're not only now using that energy, that single source of energy to generate electricity, but we're now using the waste heat from the generation process to using our absorption cooling AC units to generate cooling. So we're now moving from a stage where back in the days when you're in JPS will tell you that the overall system is perhaps what, 28%, 33% efficient. And now at UE, we move over to having LNG. Now we're cogeneration. And now we're at a level of about 80% efficiency. What it therefore means is that for every MMBTU of energy, of LNG that we burn, we're using up to 80% of that between electricity and reusing the waste heat. And this is also a low carbon energy source. And so a lot of the benefits you'd have gotten from renewables, you're still getting. And you're also saving because you're now being more efficient. So there are other ways we could look at it, and not just through renewables, but also through low carbon energy sources. So the start I might add that. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that, Stanley. Seen anything else from the audience?
Yes, certainly. We have a comment from Mr. Damian Meeks in the chat. He says we need to focus on energy security as opposed to energy independence. He mentions that energy independence means relying on national or local sources of energy. But even there, flexibility is limited if one of those sources are interrupted or runs out. So a well-functioning global market is a better solution, he believes. And let's not make the same mistakes pre the Ukraine-Russia crisis. Any comments on that?
I'd like to comment on that. I do agree to some extent that independence suggests that you source your energy, within your borders. We do have that limitation in that we are not like Europe and on the continents where you can transmit power across borders, across territories. And so to that extent, we should focus on energy security, which is having the right mix of energy sources from a diverse set of options at the right price in the format that you need it when you need it. Essentially, that's the package for security. And that's where Jamaica has gone significantly. Have improved our status. You've heard about natural gas, taking over some of that space from crude oil. The renewables are up to 18% or so in electricity generation and for other heat sources and so on. And we still have more opportunities. If I can just touch on one of the questions earlier and throw something at the engineers to say that, we do have the CARICOM Energy Efficiency Building Code, right? Which we really need to start paying attention to for our own building approvals. So it's much easier and a lower cost to integrate renewables into your building while building rather than to retrofit. So all the architects and the engineers, the construction guys need to begin to say, okay, I'm putting up a 20-unit apartment, and I'm going to reserve a certain amount of roof space. I'm going to put in the structural loading, so that can be put on. And the government really should be saying, if you have a manufacturing facility, or if you have any kind of commercial facility, I don't want to use the word must, I could get in trouble, but you should incorporate a certain amount of renewables on that building and a certain amount of storage. This Caribbean external tariff is suspended. The GCT is removed from lithium, and duties are reduced. There's no excuse for not using more storage. And so if JPSCO for whatever reason couldn't deliver power to you at a certain period of time, you have your battery storage, you have your renewable, you have business continuity. And this is an opportunity in this crisis for us to utilize that. And let me just add one other thing, and that is to say that energy leasing is now an opportunity, right? There was a typical go to the bank would tell you its rates, which are not too wonderful. But now you have energy leasing. The USAID and CADMOS have a project where you can obtain your renewable energy equipment and you pay for it over a period of time you know, I don't want to commit your time, but a number of years. And when you're done paying, the unit is yours. The payment is not painful. And so these are the kind of things that we must use, as Metry said. Let's not waste an opportunity. Let's not waste a crisis. It's the time to turn Jamaica around.
So I have a quick one, as you mentioned that though. While Shauna looks in the part any question, jump into you though, Metry. We're talking about energy security, but I want to get a little bit more basic to the ground. Food security. What should we be expecting based on this war in terms of, you know, the chicken, the bread, the flour, the fundamentals that persons might be worried about? You know, is there any risk? Should we be concerned with what we see happening around us? You're on mute, Metry.
Oh, our basic protein in Jamaica is chicken, and we produce chicken here. So I think that, and we do grow everything else that we need to eat. Now, do we import a lot? Absolutely, we do. That is by choice. That is what consumers and the government policies have led to. So I don't envisage us having any. I don't envisage us being in any issues food security wise because of the war specifically. No, I don't see that. I had my hand raised, and I just want to throw one thing out there, Marvin.
Yeah, man, go ahead.
Mr. Barrett had said that, you know, manufacturing companies should get solar and renewable energies, and I fully agree. But I'm wondering how the Institute of Engineers as a body feels about maybe any new house that build should have to get the permit, should have to have solar and water catchments and things of that nature. Is that something that you guys are thinking about and lobbying for, and if not, why?
So maybe I can tell us. So, you know, right now it's not a requirement as it relates to, say, solar, but what you'll find now through the parish council to help to drive sustainability, they are now pushing out to have more water harvesting to be a natural part of developments. But I agree, there are a lot of opportunities to incorporate solar as a standard part of a development. And interestingly, you know, the NHT also provides funding where you can get PV loans at a reduced rate, you can get solar water heaters at a reduced rate to be incorporated in your development. For it to become mandatory, you know, that then requires also some influence on the policymakers. But what we have found, and let's speak from, you know, my perspective, is that for developments that are touted as sustainable, that are environmentally friendly, you do get a higher traction. But sometimes there is an uptick in terms of a price point when you try to build in some of these renewables. So I think greater access to loans at reduced interest rates will help to stimulate that. And I can have Len give his thoughts as well in terms of what he's seeing.
To just answer Metry directly on this one, remember we have the building code, the building act, and I believe the committees, but the regulations aren't yet complete. You know, the wheels of bureaucracy, they grind very slowly. And I sit on one of the regulations committees. And so there's a bunch of regulations that are ready, but not all. Rainwater harvesting is one of them that I think is up for final review. I think COVID had kind of slowed it up. So that's there. But David raised a point about the energy efficiency, and I think that is something that needs to come to bear, Marvin. We can have a discussion on it later about the energy efficiency in terms of one of the codes, one of the local application. So we can look at something, maybe adapt and then go with that. So that might be something that's good for the JIE to drive. So thanks, David, for pointing that one out, because I think if we can get that in early, I've been a part of some initiatives to bring in an energy efficient house. But you know, if you don't win the politicals with it, the decision makers with it, then it just doesn't fly. But we have to go there. We're going to have to go there. So sometimes it's just do it step by step and then wear them down by attrition or something until it comes to what we want. So we take what we can get until gradually we get effectively what we want. So we know the harvesting is coming. We have to go this way, guys. It's just a no-brainer. It's just when. All right, but we keep at it.
You know, that's a good point as well, because, you know, we have started on this journey. We have the net zero building at UE, right? Which, you know, JIE was a part of it, JIA, another institution supporting it. And, you know, we did a tour recently, you know, and we found that, you know, some of the benefits that we thought would have had in terms of the research around the data to drive decisions for young engineers being trained to go and see what happened at the end product developer. We were just not extracting the benefits. So we would have done the project, but not seek to extract. And it wasn't even function as it should. So that's an area we believe, rightly so, GI will have to get involved in to energize around, you know, renewable net zero so that we can be more sustainable long term. So we do have a role to play. Let me, I know the time is going. I'm going to jump back to Shauna. Is there any other question from the participant that you want to share?
Yes, I do. Must say I'm enjoying the deliberation so far. I have a question here from Ovando Bassett. Has there been any collective lobbying for a low-cost annual loan scheme for the manufacturing sector? Has there been any collective lobbying for a low-cost annual loan scheme for the manufacturing sector?
Throw that out to you, Metry. That's right up your street.
Yes, through the JMEA, for years we have lobbied and we have had reasonable degrees of success through the Exim Bank, DBJ, and now some of the commercial banks are offering special loan facilities, loan rates, NCB, JN Bank, BNS, Sagicor. So you simply need to go into your bank and say, listen, I'm a manufacturer, I'm here to get loans for renewable energy, and see what's available at the time. But the rates are out there. I think it's become more widespread now, and I think nearly every bank is offering concessionary rates. So yes.
So opportunities exist. And any others, Shauna?
Yes, I'm just going to go quickly through. I have a participant here that is asking, are there any local grant, loan, or private investment facilities for the development of renewable energy projects? I think we would have answered this before, but I'll throw it back out to Mr. Barrett. I know that he had commented on same.
Right. Just to say that there are a few special packages. I mentioned the USAID CADMOS opportunity, which is ongoing now, for medium-term payment plan. Same, just like where you buy your furniture at Courts, you know, you eventually own your equipment at the end of the process, but the capital requirement is much lower. Then you, of course, already have the Ministry of Finance and Public Service, which has a special COVID initiative through the DBJ, which can be utilized for energy, and that should end soon. I think it's either the end of March or the end of April. Then you have DBJ itself, which has been one of the long-standing committed entities providing special loan arrangements, and it goes through the banks. Unfortunately, the banks tend to add a bit more on it than they need to, but it lowers the portfolio cost. And then they also offer a grant for the energy efficiency, the audit part of that opportunity. So these are things which are out there. And of course, there are banks which say, you know, they have renewable energy loans and so on. And so there are some opportunities. Not a lot of grants, but I would say the grant I'm aware of is the one through DBJ, specifically for the audit, to make sure that you're putting in the amount of energy you need and you're getting the energy efficiency opportunity that you should get.
Thank you so much, Mr. Barrett. I have a question here from Roger Bevan. Russia is a leading producer of fertilizer. Shouldn't we anticipate that the demand on other suppliers that we trade with will drive up prices and therefore indirectly impact our locally grown and produced goods? Not sure if Mr. Seaga would want to.
Or Hugh, anybody want to
Or
take that
Hugh,
from the
anybody wants to
manufacturing?
take that one?
The concern
Yeah, I
around
would prefer to
fertilizers.
take that.
I don't know. Well, I take a go at it. Yeah, I believe the thinking is right. I think it would be in the same vein as if you look at wheat production between Ukraine, which is not able to plant now, and Russia, together supply about 30% approximately of the world's wheat. Then you look at corn and another 17%. So to me, if you have the magnitude of almost 50% of your wheat and corn impacted, so you can take that anywhere into, I won't call it food security, food insecurity. And if you take it again into animal feed and so on, I believe that it would be almost like probably hiding our heads in the sand if we didn't believe that there would be an impact globally, because even one basic supply and demand, you're going to have prices being impacted, and traders are going to make lots of money. So yes, animal feed, everything that touches wheat and corn, bread, and all of those things. I'm sure if this thing doesn't come to an end soon, we are going to see problems. I don't have another reading on it, to be honest with you.
Thanks for that, Hugh. I think, Sean, in the interest of time, we can only accommodate one last question for the panelists.
Sure. I have a question from Engineer Howard Chin. Why not see pumped storage of energy for small producers and for JPS? Why not see water pumped storage of energy for small producers and for the Jamaica Public Service?
Well, I could chip in here. This is Stanley. That's a quick response.
All right, go ahead, Stanley.
Once you think of pumped storage, it's pretty much a battery. You're storing energy. And, Marvin, you started off by saying energy cannot be created or destroyed. So it's some energy that you already have, you're going to use to pump that water to store for later use. And I've been able to see a few pump storage facilities. I was in South Korea, I saw one there. I was in Wales, in the United Kingdom, I saw another. And in both cases, the pump storage was really used to meet energy demand at a particular point in time where your existing generation wasn't able to meet it. So it's almost like how you use batteries right now, where in terms of the solar PV system, you store that battery for later use. So it won't really change the dynamics. And here in Jamaica, I'm not aware that we have a problem with with meeting our demand for energy. I think we have sufficient capacity on the grid in Jamaica. I think the problem we have is really one of efficiency. So if we can actually utilize that energy more efficiently to help to keep the cost down, that will help us. Pump storage in and of itself does not make it renewable if the energy source, primary energy that you're using to do the pumping, is also fossil-based. So think about it in that way. Hence, it's probably not as attractive unless you have a need for a battery. We have storing the energy and then be able to use it efficiently at a later time. That's my 2 cents on that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Smellie.
If I just have on that.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, in terms of the pump storage, you have to bear in mind that it also has geological constraints. You have to have the right soil type and right elevations and all that kind of thing. So it's not something that every and any manufacturer or entity could utilize. And the second thing then is perhaps right now the best utilization could be by the NWC and JPS. One, NWC, because if you're generating renewable energy during the day and you're not using it for pumping, you can then use a pumping to residence. You could then use it to pump to an elevation, right? Which you could then store for night release. And in that night release, then you won't need to pump you won't need to use electricity for pumping, but you could also have inbuilt hydro systems. So you could actually generate electricity while it is following the gravity path. JPSCO, of course, we know we have two peaks, one sometime earlier in the day, but the main one is in the nights when people are at home and everything is on. And so if they could utilize pump storage, and of course they have competence with hydro, if they utilize pump storage, then they could literally just release that water under gravity during the night to take off some of that peak. So my comments.
Thanks for that, David. Following up on Stanley's answer, but listen, the conversation is getting exciting. A lot of info coming in, very good questions coming from the participants, and I mean we have a great panelist responding. So, unfortunately, though, you know, we're really out of time. So what I'll suggest that for the questions that haven't been answered, we'll probably still try and email them to members of the panel, and then we can always provide some kind of email feedback to the participants. Right, but it's been a very, very good discussion, you know, touching on the different areas, whether it's the manufacturing, whether it's the energy, whether it's the construction, you know, very stimulating. So I'm going to now, just in the interest of time, you know, bring us to a closure. But, you know, listen, this would not have been possible without the persons on the panel and also the participants. But I'll ask our IPP, immediate past president, Glaister Ricketts, just to do a vote of thanks and a closeout, you know, showing our appreciation for the time that you guys have spent, you know, and sharing with us today, and for even persons who have logged on. IPP Ricketts? I don't know if you're speaking, but you might be on mute. We're not hearing you.
Right, President Ricketts, I'll take that one.
Okay.
Apologies on behalf of IPP Ricketts. He had to step out. Just want to thank our panelists or attendees. We really, really appreciate you coming out to have this discussion with us. Special thank you to those from the manufacturing sector, the experts that we had on our panel discussion today, Mr. Metry Seaga, thank you for taking the time out. Mr. Hugh Graham, we appreciate it. From the energy sector, Mr. Owen Gunning, Mr. Stanley Smellie, and Mr. David Barrett. Quite stimulating conversation. We have much to think about as we go on throughout the rest of the day. Special thanks also to our very own Mr. Lenworth Kelly from the construction sector. Thank you so much for your inputs. Or attendees, thank you so much. We were able to hear your voices, just, you know, get what your concerns are. We're able to flesh them out. We know we have much to do. We have much to do as we seek to ensure that our economy remains stable. Just some takeaways here, you know, trying to consider in a good IRP, trying to consider capacity as well as location, trying to be more energy dependent as opposed to energy
Independent. Or energy secure.
Right. More energy secure. Thinking about our supply chain, you know, trying to manage that. We know that it was not good. It wasn't optimal before the crisis. So we know we have to plan and think long-term there. How can we be more self-sufficient as a nation, as consumers? How can we do that? The engineers, the developers, the architects, how can we use the information that we have that we would have discussed in this forum to plan ahead in terms of design for housing? We have to consider that we have a big responsibility. I liked that came out. I like that it's something that we need to invest more in. Persons need to go out. There's funding available. We spoke about that. So we really took a lot from this session, and we have much to think about, team. So again, I say thank you to all, and look out for more webinars of this nature. And we hope you got all of your concerns, aired and questions answered, some questions that you perhaps had. Happy that we're able to assist. And with that, I say have a great afternoon, everyone, on behalf of the Jamaica Institution of Engineers.
Thanks for having us. Bye. Bye.
All right.
you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.